Yes. So I'm very, very excited. Thank you so much for coming this morning for this fourth session of Tehillim, of Psalms. Our last one, I was thinking that perhaps if you wanted to keep it running at any time you want, and you want to choose a psalm of your predilection, this series can continue. You, of course, have my assistance any time that you want. It would be fabulous if you want to do it now at this time, or you want to do it in another time in the evening. I'll be happy to help you out if you want to do that. So keep in touch. Let me know what you think. Yes. So now that we have most of you here, let's say that we're going to begin looking at Psalm 126. It's a very, very, very provocative psalm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen. And I want to say one thing about that. Many times I'm not terribly savvy about technology. And so when I share the screen or something, you hear nothing. And you're so incredibly polite that you'd say nothing to me. So what happens is not only that it's recorded as nothing, which then Cliff Braverman has to come to my assistance, and we have to redo the entire recording so it can actually be placed into something that is not nothing. But it would be so nice if you were to say we can't hear a thing, or the only thing we hear is the garbage collector. We don't hear anything else. It would be so nice if you become a little more Israeli. Liora can teach you about this, and just be frank and just tell me when something is not working. It won't upset me. It will be so good. So now that my dear wife is already in, we can begin. I'm going to begin sharing the screen to the words of Psalm 26 with the translation to the side, as I always do. And I also want to show you this recording of this read it, not only because I love the way that is read, but it also because the music that is associated with it has also an important component. So let me do that. And let's begin with that. Here is Psalm 126. Yes.
בשוב אדוני את שיבת ציון היינו כחולמים. אז ימלא שחוק פינו ולשוננו רינה. אז יאמרו בגויים הגדיל אדוני לעשות עם אלה. הגדיל אדוני לעשות עמנו. היינו שמחים. שובה אדוני את שבותנו כאפיקים בנגב. הזורעים בדמעה ברינה יקצור. הלוך ילך ובכו נושא משך חזרה. בו יבוא ברינה נושא אלומותיו.
So like in good music, good opera, music has the capability of adding elements to the text. Yes, to adding elements to the text. This is a text that is, for those of you that remember, is added as an introduction to what we called in the Birkat Hamazon. Remember, Birkat, part of the word beracha, of blessing, the bracha of mazon, mazon, the food. When do we recite this bracha? We recite it at the end of meals. Let's remind ourselves, because I'm sure that you're thinking, why at the end of meals? What, not at the beginning of meals? Any ideas? Just to make it a little more specific, please remember that we are specifically asked that we say a bracha before an action. Yes, before an action. So you say kiddush and then you drink. You say hamotzi and then you eat. Not here. Why not? Aha! I want to hear you now. I can see the expression in the faces. Lisa, give it a try, and then Liora.
Well, from a practical point of view, if you had to do the Birkat Hamazon before you ate, your food would be cold before you ate.
Ah, somebody that is wise just came to talk to us. Liora, any thoughts?
Well, actually, probably in those days, most food was, like Malaysian food, very room temperature. I was thinking that there are many things that we say before eating, Birkat Hamazon, and then, this would be afterwards. We say very short, thank you for this food, and afterwards, we've got time, the leisure, we are sated, and we can go and riff on it.
So I can see that both Lisa and Liora are artists. They like to imagine the world in the way that they would like it happening. They frame it in a way that they say, if the food is going to get cold, or if we already said some brachot, that would be enough. Let's leave this one for the end. Well, let me tell you what really happens. Oh, no, Mr. Cliff.
Yeah, let me preface this by saying I only got 2 hours of sleep last night, so this may be like way off. But there are, interestingly, a couple of references in the psalm to doing something after. So it says, then shall they say among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. And at the end it says, he shall come back with songs of joy. So interesting, in the psalm itself, it's like it's going to happen after something else happens.
That's an excellent point, but doesn't refer to the food. It refers to the psalm and refers to something that we're going to talk about it right now. I should say, to all of you, the Torah in the book of Devarim, in the book of Deuteronomy, says it very clearly. Ve'achalta, ve'sabata, uberachta. Translation. And you will eat, and you will be satisfied, and you will bless. Because that is the terms. Those are how specifically used. The Chachamim, the sages, understood that the blessing has to come at the end of that. It not only has to come at the end of it, but then the question comes. Is any meal the object of the Birkat Hamazon? Well, you know that that's not true. That if I eat an apple, I say the bracha for the apple, Borei Peri Ha'etz, but I don't say Birkat Hamazon. Why not? Because savata, because I didn't fulfill myself. What did they say at the time that fulfilling meant? A piece of bread.
Right.
In other words, if you don't say hamotzi, you don't say Birkat Hamazon. Now I want to go to a little bit of what Cliff was implying in his comment. The psalm is an incredible psalm for me. Every time I read it, connect with the pain. And before I tell you more, I'm going to have the incredible honor to listen to Phyllis telling us what she needs to say.
This isn't an honor, and it's not really terribly deep. However, it is better for digestion that you sit for a while after you eat rather than jump up and get into activity.
That's brilliant, and also has to do with the fact that we also sing Zmirot. We also sit at the table. If you would have been at my grandmother's house, may she rest in peace, our lunch or our dinner did not last for 30 minutes. I'm sorry, I need to go. But it would actually take a few hours. And people were singing all kinds of Zmirot in different melodies and languages, and it was an amazing thing. So I wanna tell you about the reason why it's so incredible. This psalm introduces Birkat Hamazon. Of course, this is something that we probably say daily. And what is it that happened? What is this psalm about? Let me put it back again, and let's see if we can figure it out. Who would like to read it in English?
The letters are all blurry.
So you could not see a thing. Is that because it's too big?
Now I can.
Now you can. Would you like Phyllis to give it a try?
Okay. A song of ascents. When Adonai restores the fortunes of Zion, now it's blurry again. We see it as in a dream. It's gotten blurry. I don't know if that's for everybody or just for me.
It's fine for me.
Okay. Our mouths shall be filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then shall they say among the nations, Adonai has done great things for them. Adonai will do great things for us, and we shall rejoice. Restore our fortunes, Adonai, like water courses in the Negev. Those who sow in tears shall reap with songs of joy. He will go along weeping, carrying the valuable seeds. He shall return with songs of joy, carrying his sheaves. This is the psalm. This is the psalm that we recite on Shabbat and Chagim. On Shabbat and Chagim, there is a different psalm that we recite during the week, and it's also related to Yerushalayim. But I want to tell you, I'm going to stop for a minute so I can see you all, that one of the things that is amazing about the psalm, it's about a dream. Herzl said it best. He said, Im tirtzu ein zo agada. If you want it, this will not be a story. It will be real. It will be part of us. And guess what? The man thought about it, and 50 years later, we had a state, right? So what I want to say is that the capacity for the Jewish people to dream is endless, and the fact that we still dream with the greatest of all, the boldest of the dreams is, of course, the Geulah, the redemption. And since we are coming to Pesach, to the holiday of our liberation, we are saying, yes, liberation is important, but is not sufficient, right? What we want is Pesach, and then 7 weeks later we want Shavuot, that means receiving of the Torah. Those of you that were on Shabbat with me remember me making that connection. And also, eventually at the time, a Yom Shekulo Shabbat, a day that would be completely Shabbat, meaning when Shabbat will not exist anymore. And that would be when redemption comes. That's our boldest dream. And you'll say, this is never going to happen. Why every time for Havdalah we actually look at the lights and we try to figure it out, and we are sad because Shabbat is leaving us, meaning redemption has not arrived. And why is it that the mystics in the city of Sfat decided to actually create a service called Kabbalat Shabbat that did not exist before, but they did it to what? They said it in the famous piyut, Yedid Nefesh, Ma'er Ha'uv Kiva Moed, speedily, my beloved, talking about God, speedily, my beloved, the time has come. The time has come for redemption, right? So in here, this is a topic of a different nature. The psalm is actually recited and actually probably written in Iraq, in Babylon, right? Shira Ma'alot, the Song of Ascents, et Shivat Tzion, Ainu Kecholmim, returning to Zion. We are dreaming. Remember that in antiquity the Greeks knew it best. What did they do when they wanted to punish somebody with the utter punishment? It was not death, right? What was it? Exile. They send them to an island, to Crete, to somewhere that is. And I can't even forget about our brothers and sisters in the Ukraine, right? When they are coming back, Ainu kecholmim, they're coming back from wherever they left, because now they have to return to their homeland, right? So every Shabbat and every Chag, we still remember those days. We remember the time, and not only we do. I mean, you know, Verdi does too, right? With the celebrated chorus about talking about the slaves, right? That we have sung so many times. So the idea, the powerful idea and a painful idea that we were sent out of our land. However, we never forgotten. Not only we never forgotten, but also we dreamt with returning to it. Now you might imagine what is that happened for the first chalutzim, for the first pioneers, right? When they finally are able to come back to the land of Israel. And I'm sure Liora can tell us lots of things about this. And how they will kiss the land, because that was the place where finally the whole thing can come back. We can come back to our place. So now we are restored in some measure, of course, because this is, of course, the beginning of it. But without being in our land, this is not possible. The whole thing coming from a dream. Ainu kecholmim. We dreamed with this, right? In Shivat Tzion. Now, let me say to you, the word Shivat means lashuv, means to return. Now you know it too, because you know the word teshuvah. At Shirat HaNefesh we have talked many times about to return is the answer, because the word teshuvah also means answer in Hebrew. Sheila utshuvah, right? And a question and an answer. So the answer is to return. It's Shivat Tzion. So you could talk about it in national terms, and you can talk about returning to the land of Israel, returning to Tzion. Tzion meaning that that place where we left, and many times Tzion is also connected to Yerushalayim, of all places, right? So people say, if you are around the world for the Amidah, where do you look? What do you face to? East. Well, if you're in Japan, is west. I'm sure. Probably Naomi will remind me of this. But right, but it's Shivat Tzion. So you face east because east is Yerushalayim, right? What happens if you're in the land of Israel? What do you face? You face towards Jerusalem, wherever you are. And what happens if you are in Jerusalem? You face to the Kotel. You face to the place where once we had the temple with a big T. So even in our actions, there is the desire that we are actually coming back and always dreaming with coming back. If you, like me, have not made Aliyah, and I hope we all do speedily, if you haven't, maybe you can read this differently. So the word Tzion it also is the root of another word. Maybe Liora will help me here. Metzuyan, with the idea of excellence. The idea when you have a student, or when you want to praise somebody, you say Metzuyan.
You know, because I'm from the Negev, I always think that also I should mention Midbar Tzin, you know, the
yes
of Zion Tzin.
Right.
Which
and
where we had amazing conglomerate get together of foreign ministers of Arab countries in Israel just this weekend.
Right. And I want to say to all of you, thank you, Liora, because what is that the psalm is also telling us? I'm going to put it back so you can see it. Give me a second. So Liora is talking about Midbar Tzin, right? And it says, Shuva Adonai et Shevitenu, help us return, right? Or restore our fortunes, and sometimes it's told Ka'afikim Banegev, right? In the Negev. And guess what? I have to remember, and I'm sure others of you remember, that when Ben Gurion decides to retire, where does he go?
Negev.
That's right. Thank you, Fran. Exactly. That's where he goes. Sde Boker, a kibbutz, because that is where the whole enterprise, the Israeli enterprise, says, and then it connects us with agriculture, as all our holidays do. Azorim bedima. And if you remember, this comes full circle to our first of the Psalms. If you remember when we studied Psalm 30, remember what is that we were saying? That it says, Ba'erev yalin bechi. In the evening, we will cry. Ubaboker rina. And in the morning, we will rejoice. And remember the paradox, right? The paradox that for Judaism the day begins, Vayehi erev vayiboker. It was evening and it was morning. So the same with Psalm 30. And in here, Azorim bedima berina iktor. Those that are actually planting with tears. That are planting with tears. Don't worry. Your fruit will come with songs of joy, or with joy if you like it. I don't know if David, you raised your hand or you... No, okay, good. So Azorim bedima verina iktoru. We're gonna stop for a second, and I wanna indulge you with another really historical recording of this psalm. I'm going to again share the screen, make sure that the sound is done, and put it right in there. And here it comes, and we'll talk about it in just a minute. Here it goes. Please tell me if you can't hear it.
Oh
So I think you get an idea. So the gentleman that is singing in the 1920s, of course the recording it's a poor recording, but I thought historically very important. The gentleman that is singing is considered the greatest Chazan of all times. His name, Yosele Rosenblatt. Such a great voice, such a prodigy, that he actually lived. He came from Russia, and he lived in New York City. And the famous Caruso, right? The famous great Caruso said that he was in a sense very glad that Yosele Rosenblatt was Shomer Shabbat, that he was Shabbat observant. So when he was offered $1 million to sing opera at the Metropolitan Opera, he said no, because he had to break the Sabbath. And therefore Caruso felt that he would not be compared to Yosele Rosenblatt. And in fact, we know that Caruso went to Yosele Rosenblatt's synagogue to listen to him sing. There was a time where the concept of Chazanut was cherished to a point that people would do anything. They would not miss it. They would talk perhaps too much about the Chazanim that were leading services and too little about the Tefillah. But nevertheless, they found, especially for those of us that did not have the training to understand deeply the text, that this singers, this Chazanim, were able to transfer the feelings of the text to the music. But I also wanted to bring it to you because he was related in terms of his family. He was the brother-in-law of a gentleman, Pinchas Minkowski. Pinchas Minkowski, you may not know about him, also a celebrated Chazan. He was born in Odessa, in what is today the Ukraine, right? And guess what? He came to the States, and then at some point he stayed in New York City for 4 years, and maybe like reminding between the famous relationships between synagogues, he said, "I'm not appreciated," so he went back home. So Pinchas Minkowski wrote, or we are told that he wrote the melody, this melody that you heard, that is perhaps the best known melody, at least in the Ashkenazi circles, of course, on Shir HaMa'alot, on the Psalm 126. And Pinchas Minkowski is also known by another famous, super famous poem by another member of the Odessa family that became the national poet of Israel. We're talking about Chaim Nachman Bialik. And Chaim Nachman Bialik writes a poem that is called Shabbat HaMalka, the Queen Shabbat. And for those of you that might have heard it, it says, Achama merosh hailanot nistalka, right? It's talking about the time that the Shabbat is beginning to come. Interestingly enough, Bialik, who comes from a cheder, who actually studied Talmud very deeply, and then he became more of a secular Jew, but nevertheless had some of that in his blood. He writes this poem, Shabbat HaMalka, the Shabbat Queen, and every single stanza, there are 4, in general, for the sake of time. When you come to my home for Zmirot, we're going to sing the 4 stanzas. But each of them is actually related to another poem that you also know very well, Shalom Aleichem. All right, Shalom Aleichem Malachei Asharet, of the famous midrash that says that when you come to the house of the Jewish people, and on Shabbat there is a table set with neirot, with candles, and people are celebrating Shabbat, then the good angel looks and says, "It's good, it's good." So the story takes about that, and it says, "Shalom Aleichem, welcome, Malachei Asharet," those angels that come from on high, that come from heaven. I guess the angels in our imagination live in heaven. So Chaim Nachman Bialik writes this poem, Achama Shabbat HaMalka, and Pinchas Minkowski writes the melody that has become perhaps the only melody that everybody knows. Achama merosh hailanot nistalka, also a Minkowski melody. And sometimes we composers say, if there is only one melody that people will remember, that's it, we can go. He wrote 2. Anyway, so it's interesting about this melody that in the voice of Yosele Rosenblatt, that there is a patina of sadness in it, the sensation that something hasn't happened yet. And I want to say that it's captured very well, because when we go back to the psalm, I'm always intrigued by this very interesting element. We talked about the Azorim bedima berina iktoru, those who sow in tears shall reap with songs of joy. And then it says, Aloch yelech ubacho, he will go along weeping. And I use on purpose the word he, because I don't know, and I want to hear your opinion. Who is that person? Who is that is weeping? Because if you remember, before that, we are talking in the plural, azorim, not azorea bedima, azorim bedima, those who sow in joy. And then it turns to the third person singular, haloch yelech ubacho, he will go along weeping, nose meshech azara, carrying the valuable seeds, right? Zraim, bo yavo berina, he shall return with songs of joy, nose alumotav, carrying his sheaves. Who's that? Barbara, please. I can't hear you, dear.
I'm
Okay.
thinking that perhaps you're talking about, resettling the land, or not owning the land of Israel, but it has to be done one individual at a time, or it can't be done by a group. So maybe that's why it's singular, is because each person has to do it.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? Naomi.
I also think there's some saying to the effect that we like we eat the food, but we don't think about the labor or the people who do the work. And so maybe it just, we could think of all the people that have to do the hard work to get the flour, to grow the wheat, to grow the fruit, to grow what we eat, and also be mindful of that labor that we have very little part of.
So that's when the singular is to focus on the person that is actually doing that work?
Could be.
Great, great. Any other thoughts? Fran, please.
The seeds could be not physical seeds, but seeds of knowledge, seeds of awareness, seeds of insight.
Thank you for that comment. If you allow me, I want to amplify it. I think that haloch yele ubacho, his aloch, from the word to walk. Remember the word halacha, yes? To walk. So he goes walking, right? Crying because it hasn't happened, but yet has the seeds. Now, Fran was talking about the seeds of knowledge. It's talking about the seeds of creativity. Yes, I'm sure you would say something like that. I would like for you to consider that those are the seeds of redemption. And the one that is walking is God. Haloch yele ubacho. And God is crying because God's children are away from the land. And it has the seeds, and then what it ends, Haloch yelech ubacho bo yavo berina, but one day will come, will return with happiness. Nose alumotav. It would be no seeds anymore. It would be the sheaves, would be the conclusion of that. It will be at the time when redemption will materialize. So not in vain, there is this concept in the Jewish world that the redemption will come from Zion. That's perhaps the reason why so many people, when they pass away, want to be buried in Yerushalayim. Right? The idea that one day when redemption comes, Mechayeh HaMeitim, the redemption of those that will return to life, would actually be coming. It would be not different that this time that we are experiencing as we are coming to the month of Nisan. If you remember, with this past Shabbat, we had the Achazat HaChodesh, the announcing of the new month. And we announced the month of Nisan, the month that is coming, this coming Shabbat, right? Well, we actually will be bringing it in as a month with psalms, but different psalms. They call the Hallel psalms. I wanted to also tell you something that may sound intriguing to you. This Psalm 126, at the times of the Zionist Congress, right, in Basili, in 1905, it was considered one of the choices for the Israeli national anthem. Why do you think? Actually, not only one of the choices, it was perhaps one of the 2 or 3 choices. It didn't win, we know that. In fact, the text that won had 8 stanzas that of course became what we now know. Our friends of Kolot Alev know because I made you learn them all in one of those settings. But the truth is that שיר המעלות בשוב אדוני את שיבת ציון היינו כחולמים, we were dreaming with returning to Zion, was one of the very few that people felt deserved to become the Israeli national anthem. Let's discuss for a minute. What do you think? Do you think it was good that it wasn't chosen? Do you think that it would have been good for it to be selected as it? Would have made any difference? David, please.
Everything with Israel becomes ideological intense. So that would make part of Tehillim ideological intense. So I'm glad they didn't choose it.
Right. It's very interesting because if you wanna think about it, today the Hatikva is one of those, actually the national anthem is taken apart by many people that feel that it's not inclusive enough, right? So you are onto something. Perhaps this was even more so. This psalm does not say that only Jews need to come. In fact, the word Jewish is never described in the psalm. But of course, it is specifically talking about those that were expelled from the land. That's why you're returning. You don't return to something that you have never been in. Yes, and that's also the power of Teshuvah, to know that we've been there, that we have the capacity to return, that it is not something new, that is something that we all had all along. So when we go Ashivenu Adonai Elecha Venashuva, right? The famous words of Mishlei, the famous words of the Proverbs that now we associate so wisely with the Torah, right? Let us return, God, and we will return. Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, this idea of renewing our days as of old or in those days. Steve, please.
So it would also depend, in my mind, on the melody. So I maybe it's just that I am so used to the melody of Hatikva, but I don't see the melody that Rosenblatt sang as being national anthem feeling to me. So that's my comment. My other little comment is it was so interesting the way that he ended his singing of this with the just so
Talk to us.
tiny.
What did you see? Talk to us. Tell us what you saw or you heard.
Well, the last word, maybe a couple of words, were just pianissimo. They're very tiny. He barely sang them. And maybe expressing the sorrow that it hasn't happened yet.
Right. This almost like the humming was this halevai. I hope that this materializes. Remember, the recording is from the 1920s. I want to conclude telling you something that it always brings me both to tears and to joy. The idea that the main or many of the main central institutions of the state of Israel were built before the state, right? So the Technion, the famous engineering school, 1920s, the Israeli Philharmonic, right? Before the state is created. And in fact, to the point that those that came, and remember we have seen the movie of the pioneer that brings in, right, Bronfman, that brings 70 musicians from the most amazing orchestras, right? All of them first violins, and now they have to create an orchestra. They all argue with each other. I am number one. Right? And who of all of them is coming to conduct them. Do you remember the first of all those days? A famous Italian conductor.
Toscanini.
Yes, thank you. Arturo Toscanini is the one that comes to conduct them all. And they have a place, this is before the state, and they were concerned because they didn't know if they were going to fill up 3,000 seats. People were like Hillel when he wanted to study, the Midrash tells us. They were on top of the ceiling of the theater to try to hear this. 120,000 people wanted to listen to this Israeli Philharmonic with Arturo Toscanini. Toscanini was so moved, he took it to all the kibbutzim, all around, to bring the music to them. And with that, so many other institutions of Israel that are created in advance to the state. The Jewish University at Arad Sofim, all that, meaning that, and this is where I want to leave you with, as we entering our Pesach time. May we all have the capacity to dream big. May we all have the capacity to keep thinking of how can we create a new paradigm that transcends the here and now into a place that we hopefully feel it would be a better place. May we have the capacity to take those seeds that Fran was talking about, those seeds of creativity, of knowledge, of Geulah, and transform them into alumot, into sheaves, right? In the same way that the rabbis in their immense wisdom took agricultural holidays of the Shalosh Regalim, of the three holidays of pilgrimage, and they created a new paradigm for them. So then may it be that Chag HaBikurim, the beginning of the gathering of the fruits, would then be the receiving of the Torah. And may we all receive it every day, bechol et ubechol sha'ah, in every moment and every hour. And with that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming every Monday during this month to study, to talk, to inspire, hopefully, ourselves with these sessions, and keep it going and keep dreaming big. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful week.
Thank you, Ramon, so much for doing these.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Ramon.
Yes. Very
I want to know
insightful.
when the
Thank
next
you so
one
much.
starts.
A super team. All of
You
you.
know, it's just thinking
Great
that it's
people.
so interesting.
When does the next class begin talking about the seeds?
To be continued.
Okay.
Really? Good.
All righty. Okay, enjoy yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.